We're talking tires. It's Mo. Let's go. Now, we all know that your motorcycle is riding on a couple of contact patches less than the size of the palm of your hand. Lower the pressure, maybe gets a little bit larger, right? But I want you to think about something, especially now we're at the end of coming on the end of winter. And some of us are already out on the roads, but in other areas, you're getting your bike out there, maybe looking at some salt on the road, thinking about that, hoping for that first rain. But here's what's on my mind. Many guys out here in California where we split lanes use their track bike for commuting. There's nothing wrong with that, right? Here's the issue. When you're commuting and you have 35 and 38-degree temperatures in the morning, and that front tire is in that stream of air, what do you think the temperature is on that tire? You can ride your bike in a straight line and check how warm it is, and it doesn't get very warm riding in a straight line. Now, let's say you're using that track bike and you've got Dunlop Q4s. Dunlop Q4s have an optimum operating temperature around 150 degrees for the front, 165 for the rear. Last time you're at the track, your tires were probably close to that optimum operating temperature, maybe up to 180 even, right? Now, at that temperature, you can squeeze your front brake and your wheel comes up in the air very easily. And you could roll that throttle on and get that weight transfer into the rear, and that tire will bite, and you don't have any slippage at all at the end of your last track day session. Fast forward to your commute. It's 38 degrees. Your front tire might be getting 50, 60 degrees. It's certainly not over 100, not if you go in a straight line, not if you're splitting lanes. You got the wind chill factor and all that. Car cuts you off, and now you should be squeezing the brake, right? We know not to grab the brake because that's going to completely cause you to lose your front end, especially if it's cold. Now, here's the challenge. The reason you have traction is because the tire sits into the road. If I walk outside, you walk outside and you push your hand into the asphalt, you're going to have marks in your hand from the asphalt. Same thing's happening to the tire. It's pushing down into those imperfections in the road. And that's where your traction comes from. It's sort of like a gear effect. That's why on the front brake with the sport bike, the more you squeeze, and naked bikes, touring bikes, the more you squeeze, as you squeeze progressively, that tire is forced into the ground because the weight transfer is going to the front and it's digging deeper, which is why the more you squeeze, the more you can squeeze, right? Now, if your tire is cold, first of all, it's not pliable enough to get in there. The hotter the tire, obviously, the deeper it can dig in, right? If your tire is cold, it's sort of skating along the top of it. If you grab a handful of brake with a cold tire, there's nothing else for it to do but slide. And if you slide, you're going to drop. Now, you can still do it with the Q4 in 38-degree weather, but you're going to have to be progressive on the brake. And in an emergency, you don't always have enough time to be as progressive as you need to be in order for that tire to actually heat up in that braking cycle. Now, I mean, you could argue, yeah, well, if I, tap my brake every once in a while, I'll keep my tire warm. That's true, but do you do that? The point is, you have a long way to go before you get to the optimum operating temperature. That's on the front. Now, on the rear, we have the same problem. That rear is so easy to spin. Again, it's biting in, and as you give it gas progressively, the weight transfers to the rear. It pushes the tire further and further into the ground, giving you more and more bite. The more bite you have, the more bite you can get. If you spin the tire while it's cold, it never bites, it just slides. And there's enough YouTube videos that you can see where people grab a handful of front brake. There's one I'm thinking of in particular where a dog runs out, and I think it was 3 or 4 people went down, and one of them went down clearly because of a cold tire, too much brake situation, and you lose the front like that. Most of us have probably experienced that at least once. It's very painful. It's not something you want to repeat. So what do? Well, one thing, if you're running track tires and you're commuting and it's winter, early spring, and you're seeing temperatures below 50 degrees, you want to think twice. I'm not saying don't run track tires on the street. Just be aware of what you're asking for. I'm telling you, if you understand this fully, you could easily make the argument that you should have 2 sets of rims, one for the track, one for the street. And then you could go ahead and put slicks on and get your tire warmers and do it all the right way and get some sport touring tires for the street. Sport touring tires are designed to operate way down low in the cold temperatures. They've got the silica to help traction in the rain, which is what you're going to be running into when you're commuting, when you're sport touring, when you're riding your motorcycle for utility purposes. That way you leave the track tires, which are focused for the track, you leave them for the track. So there's something to think about. By the way, most of us who've been to track days know that in the beginning of the day, especially in the cooler months, we hear over and over and over, warm up your tires, warm up your tires, warm up your tires. You know, first 2 laps, warm up your tires. And lo and behold, practically every track day I've been to has had somebody go down because of cold tires. Again, at the end of your last session, your tires were warm and you go out there trying to do what you did then, you can't do it. You're going to slide. Here's another little known fact. I got this from a racetrack operator. He told me that one of the largest causes for people to stop riding on the track are cold tire crashes. And I thought about that, and it makes a lot of sense, because if you don't know why you went down, you did the same exact things you did in the last session, and now you dropped the bike. And by the way, I did mention it's very painful. It's almost like you're riding, and because you don't know why you went down, it worked fine before. Why didn't it work now? Maybe losing the front end and turn or whatever. And because you didn't know what it was, you're riding around thinking there's this mysterious force that's going to just come in and yank your tires out from under you. I'd be scared too doing $140 or $150 if I didn't know when that mysterious force was going to come. So warm up your tires on the track. Consider using sport touring tires on the street. And you know what? For most of us, we're not riding, we shouldn't be riding hard enough, fast enough on the street to warrant track tires. And I'm going to tell you one other thing. If you're doing race lines on the street, sure, you're using a lot more lean angle, but you're asking for some other problems. If you use sport touring lines, which are more like contour of the road, think about CHP riding side by side through the twisties or slightly staggered, you're running the contour of the road. You're not going to be leaning as much unless you're on something like Tail of the Dragon. There's an incident that is starting to occur way too much out here in California, and I call them the bot dots. You know, the reflectors that are on the yellow lines? Now, those things are fine. You can hit them all day long and you're not going to have a problem. But more recently, more and more of those are coming loose. Maybe it's the age of the road. Who knows? It's what temperature changes up and down. For whatever reason, these bot dots are coming loose. And if you're leaned over that far, more than 45 degrees, loose bot dot, you probably don't stand a chance of staying up. So consider your lines on the street. To me, there's no reason to be using race lines and leaned over that far when you don't know what the road surface is. When you're riding more contour of the road, you're going to be using a lot less lean angle, and you have more options for direction changes and things of that nature. And if you do hit something like a bot dot, you do have a chance to catch it because you're not going to be going so fast. Because you're not going to lose the tires so fast. So be safe out there.